Greetings and salutations to our fine podcast audience.
Hello,
Ed,
everyone.
Nathan, how's everybody doing?
This
really good right
is
now.
my favorite podcast.
It should be because
I don't know what number this is. It's got to be like 40.
we've been doing it since January.
That's what I'm saying. 40.
So, we're in that
We're
range.
close to 40.
We're in that range. And it took us that many episodes to finally get a sponsor.
We have a sponsor. And they brought food.
They brought food. We are
and other stuff.
yes. We are eating vegan lasagna cups.
Yep.
It's good.
It's really tasty
They are
for vegan.
amazing. I'm not vegan myself, but these are tasty. They're very good.
If all vegan, I'll just say this: I haven't eaten other vegan food. This is why I won't be eating the rest of the podcast.
No, because you can't keep talking
I
like
can't talk and eat, but I do.
Yes.
I can. I am capable of it.
Yes.
So tell them about our sponsor.
Our sponsor is
Today's episode sponsored by
brought to you by our friend Michael Laidlaw. Who,
Michael
yes,
Laidlaw.
thank you so much.
Member of
He's
our church.
a fine podcast listener.
Listener,
And he has
owner of businesses.
He has a business, Good Food, Good Fuel. He does private cooking classes and catering and
He's a professional chef.
professional vegan chef.
And from the sound of it, owns an oil conglomerate. So, nope.
What's the name?
Good food, good fuel.
Good fuel. I didn't
Good
get
food.
it. I didn't
No,
get
fuel.
it there
Sorry.
for a second.
Okay. Nope,
But
that's
now
not
I
what
get
Eating
it.
fuel.
Now I get it. So yeah, thanks to Michael. You can find him
Long
on
time.
Twitter and Facebook, and he's also has this business. Why don't you tell him about this?
Give him this camera, Joel.
Yeah.
This, by the way, when he and his wife Tammy first came to our church 13 years ago, this was a part of the new people's gift we gave out. You know, we now have a big old blue box of gifts. This was what we gave out, full of, I think, candy at the time. We like candy.
It's a coffee mug for
It's
those
a
who are
coffee
just
mug
listening.
with the Community Christian logo on it. I think our logo colors have changed.
Yep.
But anyway, they also have another business called Everything's Gone to Pot.
There you go.
For people
great.
who like puns. And so
Yeah.
they take things that are not normally pots, they turn them into pots. They gave us a plant. He told us what this is, and it's called the plant. I cannot remember.
You don't remember.
I cannot remember.
It
what
was
it's called.
something like UFO or some
Oh,
kind of
that's
plant.
exactly what it. The UFO. I knew it had something to do with
'Cause they look like
planet.
flying saucers.
It has
They
something
do.
to do with planets. I was trying to think. It's something with the.
It's a
planets.
very unique looking plant.
And so
I like it. It's a good looking.
Yeah,
plant.
talk to them. You find them online. I bet. Do they have no website I see on here? But they do have Facebook and Instagram. Everything's gone to pot.
There you go.
Do they also have Facebook and Instagram
Yes,
there?
they do. And Good Food, Good Fuel does.
He's
as well.
coming back to do stuff at that cancer center. He told us that's just opened back up for him. So anyway, thank you, Michael. Thank
you,
Tammy.
Mm-hmm. Excellent
Love you
food.
guys.
We are enjoying.
And
this
anyone
as
else who,
well.
even if you don't want to sponsor, but
Yeah.
you just want to bring us food.
Oh yeah.
So like you're on the opposite end of this, and you're not a vegan. You're all about eating meat.
You just want to
We
bring
also would like.
We will
to
bring-
eat-
we
we
bring
bring
us a
that.
slab of
eat
meat.
that. Yeah.
Vegetarians, we will try your food.
Sure, bring us whatever you got.
Tofu, I've never personally had any tofu.
Yeah,
Really?
Never. Not a bite of it.
We'll have to remedy that at some point.
there you go.
Okay.
I'm all for it.
So, as soon as I swallow, get this podcast going.
Is tofu a part of your
Isn't there tofu? Isn't tofu the stuff that's in the in the hot and sour soup?
I was going to say that's where I get most of my tofu.
It's
I
the-
love
what it
it's
is?
the big
hot and sour
strips.
I have had it in time.
Yeah.
I didn't know
That
what
little
that
white
was.
stuff
It's
that's
just mystery things.
Yeah, I thought that was tofu. but
I am not a person who has
I think
to
I've
know
also
what I'm
had
eating.
it in a burrito. I know all the places like Moe's and places
Moe's
like that
and
have it.
places,
I
yeah,
don't think
they
I
do.
got one at Moe's, but I think I got it somewhere. Someone else had gotten one, and I was eating theirs.
You know, other people have to know.
I don't think it
everything.
happens
You
when-
don't have to
Says
describe
people-
what you're eating to me. Just hand it to me.
People often,
People give you burritos that they've eaten.
yeah, they were eating there. Like, I don't really want the rest of this burrito, and people know Nathan will eat the rest of whatever you got.
Yep, that's right.
If you're done, and so this was a person by
a-
the nature of eating tofu that probably tells me they weren't ready for the size of a
Oh,
Moe's or
absolutely
Chipotle
not.
burrito, so they came with a giant tofu burrito.
They're like
And
football
it's a
burritos.
very
Yeah, they
fit
are.
person. You know, they're a vegan. They're very
Yes.
fit person. They're doing their best
The way
life.
Americans do burritos.
Yeah.
Oversized, we're bigger than everything you ever
Well, that's
thought
what
of.
we do. Every
And I know
food item
everything.
in the
Exactly.
country is bigger than what we should eat.
Yes.
So, all right. We're going to jump right into it today because I have limited time.
Yeah, Jason's
Jason
got a
has
bounce.
places to go and
do.
people to see.
I do. So we're going to get right into Sunday discussion.
Sunday.
So Sunday we heard from Lee Strobel,
Yep.
great author, researcher, many other things,
Yeah.
and talking about miracles. And if you missed that service, you missed that really important part that we said was going to be a unique thing that you never experienced before. We actually got to hear and witness a miracle take place.
Yeah.
So if you missed that, make sure you go and
So I'll
watch
just
that.
say about that moment for
Yeah.
anybody that, and I heard this from people online because I was doing some commenting online.
Yep.
And then I also was the host in person Sunday, and you could visibly hear people impacted by that moment.
Absolutely.
Yes.
It was I couldn't hear it online, of course, but people remarked about it online. But it was cool. Our own Steve Clark was watching online this week. One of our staff members.
Yeah.
He was in an airport, and he was like, "Oh,
Yeah.
wow."
That was the first thing he said to me when he came in. I was like, tell me how I felt in the room when that happened. That was so cool.
Yeah, it's very powerful.
Yes, it was. So, so Lee's done lots of research on the existence of miracles and how they are actually still happening today. So I just thought we'd start off with, what's your thoughts on that whole thing, the existence of miracles? I guess the question that mainly I was interested in is, and he asked this in his message, was, have you ever experienced anything that you would consider to be miraculous?
Yes, I have had. Well, okay, I'm a skeptic by nature, and having been then gone to school and learned, and you have people telling you what the definition of a miracle is. I have a very firm definition. So other people tell me, I had to get somewhere really quick, and I prayed, and all the lights were green, and I'm
Yes.
like, and they, and I go, okay,
Yes.
that was cool.
Yes.
But so that doesn't fit my seminary logic of what a miracle
Yeah,
is.
me neither.
But I've had, when he told the Ben Carson story, I haven't had a dream like that, but I've had very many unexplainable things that all lined up in too many ways for me to explain.
I told somebody asked me this question this week, and I said, I don't remember where I heard this quote, but someone said in a book I was reading or in a talk I heard, it's interesting that when I pray, coincidences happen.
Right.
Yep.
That has been the thing that in my life that has happened more than anything. That I pray about some things, and then something happens that I go, that I could either call that a coincidence or God is answering me right here.
Yeah, and you guys know I've had 3 of those big ones, and I mean for me they generally had to be really big for me to take note of. I had lots of answer to prayer, but on this topic, we've talked about race recently, and I knew going into this whole thing of praying for race, our staff had been reading some stuff. I wanted a black pastor that would help me, that would lead me along the way, all that kind of stuff, and he needed to be in Coweta County. And the Sunday before all of that, I mean, we've been praying. I've been praying about this pretty earnestly. And 2 days before that very first message, I get a text from somebody that, actually Facebook message. I get a Facebook message from somebody who the name was a name I recognized from 43 years ago as being somebody two years behind me in school. He had seen a Facebook thing that I offer for prayer on Facebook, but he said, I know somebody that looks like that, has the same name as that, but that guy ain't a pastor and he lives in Mississippi. And I thought, when I saw his name, I know a name like that, but that guy's in Mississippi. And so I had been praying specific for a black pastor in our area, and this guy texts me and says, hey, is this so-and-so from Oklahoma, Mississippi? He says, is this Ed Martin from and he said his name from Oklahoma, Mississippi. He said, I'm a pastor. He is a black man. And he said, I just moved to Sonoy. Isn't
that amazing?
And I was like,
Wow.
I thought it's a little too coincidental.
It is.
That 43 years. I mean, we were friends, but I hadn't thought about him nor had a word with him in 43 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't even think I've told you guys this. Certainly not that big, but I had an interesting occasion a couple of weeks ago in our discipleship group that I'm in. We do, like we've told you before, we do rhythms every week of different emphases. We emphasize things. And this week that I was on, I was supposed to be focusing on my neighborhood. And one of the things that I decided to do last couple of weeks ago was to take a prayer walk around my neighborhood to pray for my neighbors. And so I'm walking down the street and I'm praying, and I'm not even sure what to pray. And so I just uttered this prayer. I say, God, I want to see the kingdom come to my neighborhood. I want to see the kingdom come into each one of these homes, and I know that's what you want to. So if there's any way that I can help, I'm available. I'll do whatever you want me to do. And if you just show me what it is that you want me to do, I'll be your guy. Kept walking. I turn a corner, and I'm coming back towards my house. And behind me, there had been a couple of teenage girls running around after their dogs in the cul-de-sac where I live, and I hear screams. The moment right after I'd prayed that prayer, I turn around, and one of the girls is lying in the middle of the street, screaming, holding her leg, saying, "It's broken, it's broken." I turn and I run, and not even thinking at the time, but later thinking maybe that was the thing. So I run and I go to help her. She's obviously, she thinks her ankle is broken. She can't move it. She's just screaming in pain. So I sit, and the other friend had gone in to get her parents, but they were not coming out. And so I just sat with her for a while, held onto her ankle just to keep it immobilized, and waited for her dad to get there. He got there, and he needed, come to find out, he couldn't get her up the driveway into the car. So I wound up carrying him with him, me and him carrying his daughter to the car so that she could go to the hospital and get her ankle checked out. And as I was walking home, I got home, and my wife said, "So how'd your little prayer walk go?" And I was like, it was interesting. I prayed this little prayer, and I don't know if that's the thing. I don't know if it's going to start a relationship between me and my neighbor, but it was a very, like I said, one of those coincidences that I don't think just happened.
Yep.
I just happened to be in the right place at the right time. While I was praying, God used me to help somebody, and there it was. And
I think God designs our brains in such a way, for especially those of us who are very rational. And I heard somebody say this, I can't remember where, but as we always say, I just attribute anything I can't remember to Dallas Willard. And it sounds like something he would say of God designs us in such a way that anything he interacts with can be explained away as coincidence, because by the nature of free will, he allows us to be governed by that which we want to be governed by.
Yep.
Yeah.
So if I want to believe, if I really do at the core of me want to believe that there isn't a God and that he would never interact, or that there is a God but he never interacts with his creation. His creation, he set up the natural processes and he walked away. He just let everything happen. Then that's the way I'm going to view everything. I'm going to view everything that way. And this, I believe, should be the way that believers interact, because we know that God did interact with the world in Jesus, and that afterwards he continued to work through his apostles and through the early church, that God is still very much involved in the aspect of his creation. And so when I hear these things, I can interact with those things and say, wow, look at this thing. Whether it's necessarily, because I wouldn't attribute everything to, I wouldn't go to that and go, God broke that little girl's ankle, or
of course
did
not.
something. That's the danger we get into, where we want to attribute things to God.
Yeah.
But what I always know is God was at work in Jason.
And praying that prayer.
And opening his eyes to it. God's at work in those things. And so I think the quote you mentioned, I believe, is William Temple.
Okay.
He's the one who says, when I pray, coincidences happen.
Yeah.
When I don't, they don't.
Yeah.
And, and I know people who go, well, you're looking for them. Well, then either way, it doesn't matter.
That's right.
Because what Jesus invites us to is a lifestyle where I'm looking for God at work. And if I'm looking for God at work, suddenly what I realize is he's always been at work. It isn't like when I prayed it, God was like, oh, now I got to get off the lazy boy and go do something because Jason asked me to. God's been at work.
Yes.
God's been doing these things. Yes. And suddenly there's a way that I now.
Yeah, when I open myself up in prayer and tell him there's a kingdom alignment. When Jesus says, anything you ask in my name.
Yes.
He means in my spirit, in the way.
Right.
The reason Jesus had so many things happening is he was perfectly in line with the Father at every moment. He said, I don't do anything the Father isn't already doing.
Yeah.
My problem is I'm often asking for stuff that I want God to do.
I'm asking in
that
my
God's
name.
like, man, I'm doing stuff. And if you want to do what I'm doing, the door's open. In the moment that you say to God, hey, I want the kingdom come. I want to help this racial reconciliation thing. I want to get in that kind of way. God's like, okay, there's a person that's willing. Let me show them a little bit.
Well, and I think it's funny too. You even talk about kind of more. I don't want to use the word basic, but kind of more common day things that we deal with. I've often heard people say, like, don't pray for patience, because then God's going to put you in situations where you're going to need to be patient. One, if you're praying for patience, that probably means you're the kind of person who is constantly in situations, because you don't pray for something that you feel like, I have no use for that.
Everybody in this world is constantly in a situation they need patience.
Right. That's
There
what I
is
mean.
no place, no person that doesn't have to have that.
You're praying for it because you think you need it. Two, if it's something God wants you to have, it's not a terrible thing that God
right.
goes, finally I can inflict this upon you. I've been waiting. What God is actually saying is, I've been wanting to give you patience. You haven't asked for it. And by the nature of a conversational relationship, a loving person doesn't go, hey, I know you need this, right? You go to your, like, I even think like adult children, not small children. There are things that eventually with really small children, you go, you got to have this whether you want it or not. But with adult children, you may go, hey, I know that your life would be better if you would let me help you with this, right? Maybe I can step in and kind of give you a gift to help you. But a loving parent enters in and goes, hey, I'm willing to give this to you. Just let me know if you want it. Let me know if you want it. And often as parents, we do things that we think of as loving, but it's not loving when I come in and go, hey, I know this is better for you. Whether you want it or not, I'm going to force this upon you. Well, that's not what love does. Love doesn't control. And so God, by his nature, we know there are things God wants for me that I don't want for me.
Yeah.
In prayer, it's a way of me saying to God, hey, this thing you've always wanted, you've wanted to use me in my neighborhood, you've wanted to use me to be a part of racial reconciliation and justice and, all these kind of things. God suddenly goes, thank you. Like, I've been waiting for you to be open to this.
Yes.
And that's the part when you get to, like you said, in my name. It's not about just attaching Jesus' name to your list of wants. No. It's about saying, I'm living in his name and trying to represent him in this world.
Yeah.
So,
and one of the things, back to the book, that Lee Strobel wrote, one of the things
Have you read the book? I haven't.
I have not read the book, but I've heard him talk on it about 20 times.
Yeah,
it seems like I've listened to his talk so many, and he's brought out so many things. I feel like I've read the entire thing. One of the things he points out is that, we often think that miracles aren't very common in our day, but then he goes through and says, now here's what we know that people are reporting around the globe. Right. And he gives just the sheer numbers of people who are saying this was a supernatural thing. And he said, if you're the skeptical type of person, like I am as well, you said you were too, Ed. He says, if you're a skeptical person, he said, let's just say you just toss out all of them, he said, but he said, what you're doing, he said, even if one of them were true, he said, even if one were true, then it totally shatters your theory that the supernatural is impossible.
Exactly right.
He said, so if we've got 100 million miracles reported around, he said, what are the chances that every single one of them are just wrong?
Right.
And
well,
go ahead.
You and I both know people that work in foreign, and where it really started cracking my theology is I know people that work in situations that were more like biblical times where they're pre-literate or they don't have a written language.
Yeah.
And the amount of miraculous things they tend to see is greatly increased. And because I know them personally, and I know going into those situations, they had the same theology that I did. Mm-hmm. They weren't these people that were trying, again, like Lee said Sunday, to get somebody to send in money. Yeah. They weren't They weren't trying to say, "Oh, I can heal your bad back," and they were people that were skeptical themselves. They've told me so many things that are unexplainable.
Yep.
That I go, okay. So, and then I had to get to, well, if it happens there, it probably doesn't happen here because we don't ask as much because we take care of so many of our needs
on our own.
That we aren't very dependent on God.
Mm-hmm. And then the other thing that we've all witnessed recently is that in certain parts of our world where the gospel is starting to break through in places where, Christianity is the minority, there are people reporting seeing visions of Jesus, Jesus speaking directly to them, and they are being converted with no outside influence whatsoever.
In fact, when you hear, and all three of us have heard these, and probably some of you have as well, it doesn't take much to find these accounts now. Mm-hmm. Lots of Muslims are having road to Damascus experiences, much like Paul's.
Yes.
They're open. They're just serving God. They're serving in the wrong direction, and God goes, "Hey,
here I am.
Tell your heart's good. Mm-hmm. Here's Jesus," and they're converted, and everything changes.
And one of the things that I've heard, because I've heard several people who have had these experiences, who've gone on to be preachers and missionaries who speak about it. One thing they point to is the fact that is how, in the Islamic faith, that is how they expect to be communicated by God. So there's this expectation of God is going to reveal himself to me through a dream or a vision or something like this. And so Jesus, because they are once again, They are asking for it. Now, they are not asking in Jesus' name, but they are asking for God to reveal himself to them. And Jesus goes, hey, much like he did throughout the Bible, you've been looking for God over here. I'm over here. Right? That's basically what he says to Paul. He comes to Paul and says, you've been persecuting me because you didn't think I was God. You thought you were working on the behalf of God. Turns out I was God the whole time and you missed it. And so to go into that, not that suddenly all of us will see dreams and visions, but going back to the thing you said before of when I pray and I'm open to it, that's the thing I frequently tell, because I talk often with people about kind of praying for their friends who are unconnected to Jesus and people that they would say, man, there's no chance with this person. I said, when you pray, the next thing you have to do is expect something is going to happen. Because the moment you don't expect it, I mean, and it is almost like the kind of thing that's become very cliche where people talk about the man who's stranded at sea and he says, I prayed that God would rescue me, and a boat came and he didn't. He said, no, I'm waiting on God. And then a helicopter came. It's because you weren't expecting God to. Maybe you were expecting one specific thing.
Well, you had an idea of what you thought the answer was going to be.
Right. And so, I know that's cliche and all of us have heard that before, but I think that's so true to the way we view the world, which is if I truly am open to, and I think Christians need this just as much as Muslims, that maybe my picture of Jesus isn't as complete as it should be, that I would be open to maybe the God that has revealed himself in Jesus, I still haven't seen that full revelation yet. So there are going to be things that are just going to, shock me and surprise me. And that sometimes I also will be walking this direction and go, whoa, Jesus was actually over here. Yep. I knew his name and I knew things about him, but Jesus was actually over here and I just missed it.
That certainly has been my life. And I would say, I think the whole thing of how you expect to be communicated with, people have said to me, I wish this God would speak to me. And honestly, this is not a joke. It sounds like a joke. I've always said, God knows I wouldn't accept it if I heard a disembodied voice. I just know too much about how the mind works. I would think, oh my gosh,
I'm going crazy.
I've suddenly become schizophrenic.
Yeah.
I need to get to a doctor.
Yes.
Or I can't trust my own thoughts anymore. I would not buy that because I've eliminated that in my rational way of thinking. It was the way that I
think you're right.
It would throw me to a different place.
Well, and like you said, it isn't as helpful as in places where the gospel is first breaking through, because that can easily become the whole of the gospel for some people, is this idea of praying for miracles and praying for, and I'm gonna that's really the whole of what Jesus is trying to do, is to heal people. Not that Jesus obviously is at the work of healing physically as well as all these other things, but it very easily, especially in a society where I become more rational about everything, I want to systematize it and go, I got to say these words, because that's where rationality, as great as it is, we in the West, and some people may not like this, we have overemphasized rationality. Rationality can take me some of the way. It's not the full spectrum of what God is doing. And so when I take it, part of what rationality does is, well, then the best way to, and this is rational, once I know it, the best thing to do is to systematize it. I got to figure out the exact words to say. I got to figure out how often do I got to say it.
And then what we've done is we've crept into idolatry, because we've made
our system.
Our system is the idol, and it's that old phrase of, now I want the healing more than I want the healer.
Well,
and so now I'm not even wanting God.
Right.
Yes, because, and I've seen, I've watched this, and because we have some people on our staff that became Christians in very charismatic experiences where they saw a lot of things healing-wise that I haven't seen. Yeah. They were genuine. They weren't phony. But after a while, it doesn't work the way you always think it's going to work, and you begin to lose your faith, because your faith was in what God was giving you. And so I think in what you said of God is always challenging us to move, hey, I'm not everything you thought. You thought you knew my name, you knew it was like this, you had it all figured out, and then that doesn't work for you all. And so you have to be open to God's going to move me. And God is very good at communicating to us if we're willing to listen. He's the ultimate communicator. He doesn't need words. He doesn't need dreams. He doesn't need, he can use every form if we are willing to hear from him.
Well, and I think what you just mentioned there, that ultimately is when people get down to of like, who are the Pharisees in our society? You know, is it the really church people? Is it the really this? The truth is the people ultimately who get very Pharisaical are people who think they have God figured out. Whether it's somebody who's very much on the atheist side and goes, well, I figured out there is no God. Well, that's a Pharisee type position, or a Christian who has overemphasized their religion and thinks I've systematized it. Because the truth is, Jesus, one, was hanging out with a lot of Pharisees all the time. A lot of scholars believe that Jesus probably belonged to a sect of Jewish religion that was very more close to the Pharisees than anything else. It's not that Pharisees by themselves were inherently evil people. In fact, we know Nicodemus comes into the Christian.
Paul's a Pharisee.
Right, all these people. It's not necessarily, but what comes out of it is, it wasn't that they were just evil and just hated Jesus. They were convinced, I know how God works.
Yeah.
I know what God does. Because people say, well, how did they see the healings and do it? They saw the healings and said, that's not how
That's
God
not
works.
God.
God doesn't heal on the Sabbath. So if he's healing on the Sabbath, it's not from God.
Right.
And I come up with this picture in my head of this is what God does that isn't based on all the things God said, you know, with healing on the Sabbath, caring for widows and orphans and all the things God had already said about himself. And when we get to a place on either side of that, where the miracle becomes my God or the system becomes my God, or even among Christians, this really anti-supernatural that I believe in God and I want to be a part of that, but God doesn't really work in the world. So all miracles are phony. Even among Christians, I have conversations with believers who just, all of that is phony. None of it is real. That also is a Pharisee type position. And we have to just be open to God never goes counter to his nature.
Sure.
But as he said, I think it's Isaiah, right? I'm doing a new thing. He's constantly in the process of.
We're probably about to get to your time.
Yeah, we're getting there. I was going to say, if you're interested in what we saw on Sunday and that you want more of that, of course, reading Lee's book is a place to start, The Case for Miracles. I would also say if you're in a small group, you're going to see part of the talk that was left out on Sunday.
Is it the part where he tells the story that he says is the woman that he
there's
said?
an actual interview with the woman who
very
experienced
cool
the
interview. We just
miracle.
didn't have time for it.
That's
on
right.
Sunday.
So you're going to see that in small group this week. Are we putting it on social media too? I heard
Joel
we
says
might be.
we are putting it on social media.
We are going to be
as
putting
well,
it on
so.
social media. So look at watch our
But
channel.
it's better in a small group.
It is, because you can talk
So
about
get
it.
in a small group if
So,
you're not.
but you'll get to see extra bonus footage from Sunday that you missed. And also, I thought it'd be good to bring this up because we talked about it a little last week. If you're of that mind and you're questioning all of this stuff about miracles, Nathan's doing Alpha course.
Alpha started, but you can jump in Alpha anytime.
Yeah, jump in at any point. We had our first meeting on Sunday night, and it was really, really good. I'm not leading it. I'm a part of it. I'm just the tech guy. But the people are running. They did awesome. It was a great experience. And towards the end, it's not at the beginning. So if you haven't jumped in, come in. You'll get it. There's a topic on Does God Heal Today? And it's really powerful, and
Cool.
God does cool stuff in the middle of it.
All right, so we'll put that again in the description.
Yeah.
So if you want to sign up for Alpha, you can jump on there and do that. And then for those of you who've been around here for a while, there was a series we did a couple years ago that's probably been one of our most popular series ever. It was called Imagine Heaven. And for those of you that remember that, this coming Sunday, we're going to be hearing from the author of that book in our service.
Yes.
So,
And it's a really good.
Powerful, yeah.
Yes.
It's really good.
Yes.
Lots of interviews in this one as
Yeah.
well.
Yes.
And just-
Yeah.
There are goosebumpy moments.
There are.
And that kind of stuff.
There
If
are.
you like that kind of thing, and for those of you too rational, there's good head stuff too.
That's right. There is. So, and if you don't know what I'm talking about, it's a guy that has done some research on near-death experiences and what we have learned about the afterlife from those experiences. So if you want to know more about that, that's going to be this Sunday coming up. So don't miss the experience. We'll have it both online and in person.
In person, online, everywhere.
Everywhere. So, all right. Sorry, so short this week, but maybe that's better.
Send
I
us
don't know.
questions.
Send us
Yeah,
some
we'd love to
questions.
have some
And,
Any question will do.
and I'm going to finish
And
my lasagna cup.
Don't forget about Michael's two things. We're
That's
going
right.
to post it where you
food,
can get
good fuel.
good
right.
food, good fuel,
And
and
Ed can't say it.
everything's gone to pot.
Well,
There you
that's an appropriate
This
thing
one
to
right
say on
here.
our podcast.
There you
so,
go. Most
all right.
weeks.
Particularly in 2020.
Yes,
Everything
sir.
has gone to pot.
All right. So y'all have a good week. We will see you next time.
Bye.